Hey friends, welcome back. Welcome back, episode 2. Super excited to be here with you today. And I gotta say, this is like, I normally record one and done, and I am like getting my merds wixed. I can't get my words out. My family flew in last night. I picked them up at almost 1 a.m, and I can't really make sentences, but I'm committed to getting this episode out. So bear with me. But today we're going to talk about what you let into your life shapes who you become. So have you ever noticed that what you watch, listen to, or surround yourself with slowly starts shaping your mood and your outlook? Obviously, we all have mostly noticed that. I think sometimes we're not intentional enough, and that's the whole point of this episode. I want to break it down on so many levels that next time something pops up in your life, you're going to be like, this is what she was talking about. So I've learned the hard way that what I let in always finds a way to leak back out. The shows, the songs, the people, all of it adds up. And I think it's impacting us much more than we realize. So today we're going to talk about guarding what we let in. So kind of just talking about discernment and purpose. I've been using the word discernment for a really long time. By definition, discernment is the ability to perceive deeply, especially when it comes to moral or ethical matters. It's not just forming opinions, it's weighing values, considering consequences, and choosing with integrity. It's tricky because we're all walking around with something psychologists call confirmation bias, which means our minds look for things that prove what we already believe and tune out what doesn't fit. This can be really dangerous because we want to be right. And we want to be right, be in control. We want to look good and we want to feel good. Those are like the 4 core things that we want for the most part. And sometimes being right matters more than relationship and everything. So we have to be so careful with that confirmation bias. So discernment means pausing long enough to notice when you're doing this and asking God to help you see what's actually true, not just what feels true, because feelings lie all the time. Let's be real. So recently it hit me that that's what happiness actually looks like, not chasing whatever feels good, but living with discernment. Someone asked me, why even do a podcast? Why not just write in a journal like people used to? But telling stories is as old as time. And here's why I do this, because when my mind expands, I want to share it. When I'm humbled, gutted, or challenged, I want to bring you with me. I've learned so much in the past decade from mentors, pastors, wise friends, and I am not the same woman that I was 10 years ago. And I want to say that again 10 years from now, because I don't want to ever stop growing, encouraging, and being passionate about change. I'm still human. I still make mistakes. Sometimes I know that they're wrong in the moment and I still make them. And I think that's why this conversation about guarding your heart matters so much. Because I want to live with character and integrity. I want to be a woman of conviction who says sorry, who makes things right, and who keeps growing, especially when it's the hardest. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, to grow together, to build something good, something beautiful from the inside out. Every time I want you to come away from this podcast feeling upbeat, inspired, and like there are tangible ways that you can improve your life. That's what I want for you with this podcast. So anyways, let's get right into it. So first I want to talk about media and mood. And there are a lot of confessions in this episode. You guys might come away being like, oh, Jody really does make bad choices. But when I was first married, I was obsessed with the show Scandal. Shonda Rhimes can write, obviously. Grey's Anatomy, all that good stuff. The storyline makes cheating on your spouse look awesome. Makes it look like, don't worry, that's all going to work out just great for these characters. And they're never going to be they're going to be happier than ever when they make all these terrible choices. It looked passionate, complicated, thrilling. And I loved Olivia Pope, the drama, the pacing, the power suits. I loved all of it. Watched it every week, convinced it was harmless entertainment. And at the same time, well, a few years later, actually, the song Blurred Lines came out. Robin Thicke wrote that. It was one of the biggest songs in the world. And I remember thinking, that seems like the theme of all of our entertainment. And I also noticed that Shonda Rhimes shows made me love and root for the deceit, the affair, the thrill. It was backwards. Normally those characters are demonized, and this writing was totally the opposite. Right and wrong, love and lust, truth and spin. Recently, I turned on the show Love Life with Anna Kendrick, And it's about a young girl in her 30s, I think, or her 20s, maybe, in New York. And she's basically just going around meeting people, sleeping with them, having these like really empty, sad relationships. I wasn't entertained watching this. I came away feeling blue and then so glad that that wasn't my life and those weren't the choices I'd made. And it made me wonder, like, why is this entertainment? Why do we like this? Which we'll talk a little bit more later. But I also had a friend when I was in my early 20s, and she was about 15 years older than me. And she one time told me that she couldn't watch movies with Jude Law in them. And I was like, why? I was dumbfounded. She's like, because I can't stop lusting after him afterward. And I was like, oh my, don't we need more people that are that honest? I didn't think much of it until I watched Dear John with Channing Tatum a few years later. I was newly married, and let's just say I understood what she meant. I knew better than to ever watch Magic Mike. That might have ruined me. And truly, like, my 30-year-old self might have rolled my eyes if someone said that this stuff was shaping me. But now I see it so clearly. What we call entertainment is often education, for better or for worse. And I mean, I got 25 years of Friends reruns running through my brain. It's like a moral compass written by NBC. But back in my 20s, I honestly felt like you could choose two lives. That's what I felt like watching Friends showed me. One where I did whatever I wanted, and then I knew that I could live a life where I followed God and tried to live with integrity. And even then, I felt that tension, like as though obedience meant boredom and pleasure meant freedom. But that's a lie. And how could I be so foolish to think chasing empty, cheap relationships was freedom? We just don't get it sometimes, right? But now what I know is that the deepest joy, the real kind of happiness, comes from living a good life, honoring the commitments I have, honoring my marriage, serving and loving other people, and walking closely with God. That is real happiness and true joy. And it's not full of brokenness. And when things break, I can work to repair them, not chasing whatever feels good in the moment. I was looking deeper into this and trying to get my head around why we watch these things. I was like, what? Why? But it makes sense, I guess, that watching a fictional struggle serves as a safe and easy way to understand the world's darkness and threats and different coping strategies. But what you start to think is, does exploration lead to normalizing this behavior? And that's what I think the problem is it creates normalcy around these things. So my sister, Rochelle, she's the wise one. And when we were kids, she wanted to be a missionary and I wanted to be Reba McEntire, just to bring some context to the story. That should tell you everything you need to know about our personalities. But she used to say things like, Jody, watching that stuff and listening to that music that you listen to is like heaping a burning pile of crap on your head. And I would roll my eyes. I was probably in grade 10. She was in university. But now I get it. Those little harmless things were shaping what I believed about love and marriage and myself. And listen, I'm human. Of course, I still love 90s rap. My heart will forever belong to Snoop and Eminem, and the bass line hits and suddenly you're 17 years old again with the windows down. But when you stop and listen to what's being said, it's dark. And like, for a white girl living in the suburbs, I was taking in a lot of what was happening in Los Angeles in the 90s. Violence, revenge, drugs, women as objects. Even those songs had power. They made me run faster, feel tougher, more confident and untouchable. But underneath it, there is an undercurrent of anger, pride, and pain. And I was absorbing it all without even realizing it. Now I can still hear the same beat and appreciate the artistry. And I talk real fast. I don't know how Eminem could ever talk that fast, but all I hear now is the emptiness. And I know that my spirit knows leaving that music on is not feeding me anymore. So, more confessions. Since we're being honest, I still watch Dateline. I thought a lot about this because people tell me all the time I have to turn it off. I know it's not helping me, but at this point, I have a thorough education in kidnapping prevention. I now carry mace when I go on walks because after 472 episodes of Dateline, you just know too much. So, like, if anyone breathes weird around me, I've already built a psychological profile and planned an escape route. But here's the truth. The show is probably making me more anxious than aware. It's the slow drip of fear that you don't notice right away. I did give up Criminal Minds. That was far too scary. But I'm just a little more jumpy, a little more cynical, and a little less peaceful. But that's the thing. If we fill our hearts with fear and expect peace to flow out, like it's just not going to happen. My husband thinks it's so funny because I'm so jumpy. And he says he should start an Instagram of like me screaming at him when he comes around a corner. He thinks that would be really entertaining. My friend Jess from Your Organized Life, who's going to come on the podcast hopefully next week, she has a new friend who's a detective in homicide. I was like, what? What's her phone number? No. Where can I bump into her accidentally and then introduce myself? I would like to have her on the podcast because true crime is so devastating and I can't get to the bottom of it. Right now, I'm not giving it up. I'll be honest about that. But I do know it's not helping me. So just have to be real. Okay, so we talked about media, music. What about how much scrolling you're doing? Still on the media trend. What does your weekly report say about your online intake? I did a fast for Lent from social media, and I have to say my life was so much better without it. And the same goes for the news. I think I shut the news off in 2020 and never turned it back on. And now when I turn it back on, you know, because there's something happening that I want to check out, I like literally find it funny because there's so much fear mongering. And if you leave it on long enough, it looks like the whole world is falling apart every 5 minutes. CNN and CBC specifically, it's hilarious because you don't even have to watch it to know the whole narrative. And you know those people who you love, those people who are watching this stuff on repeat, people who used to be grounded, joyful, peaceful, who are now constantly agitated, angry, and afraid. I want to say test this theory. If you think stuff in this podcast is crazy, you're like, she's taking everything way too seriously. That is totally fine. But try this stuff out. Test this stuff and see how you feel. And you will feel better because I've tested all of these except Dateline. But you will feel better. And we've been marinating in this stuff for years, right? Okay, so there's this book called The Screwtape Letters, which I have talked about before. It's a fictional series of letters from a senior demon written by, I think I said C.S. Lewis, named Screwtape is the demon, and his nephew is named Wormwood. So it's all these letters to his nephew teaching him how to tempt and manipulate humans. It's brilliant, convicting, unsettling because it reads like it was written right now. So this is just an excerpt. Dear Wormwood, be sure that the patient, we are the patients, by the way, be sure that the patient remains completely fixated on politics, arguments, political gossip, and obsessing on the faults of people they have never met. It serves as an excellent distraction from advancing in personal virtue, character, and the things that the patient can control. Make sure to keep the patient in a constant state of angst, frustration, and general disdain towards the rest of the human race in order to avoid any kind of charity or inner peace from further developing. Ensure that the patient continues to believe that the problem is out there and in the broken system, rather than recognizing that the problem is within himself. Keep up the good work, Uncle Screwtape. That is such a mic drop quote, because the more healed that we are inside, the more we pour in good things, the more we spend time with God, the more we spend time in prayer, the more we spend time in nature. Those are what fix things in us. When we get quiet, when we open ourselves up to a God who loves us, that's what starts to bring healing from the inside of us. So the fear, the chaos, the outrage on the news is incredibly exhausting. And that's why this discernment matters so much, because even good people get shaped by bad inputs. So let's talk a little bit about guarding your circle. It's not just about screens, it's also about people. You can be the kindest person, filtering what comes in to your life the best you can. But if the voices closest to you are full of gossip, bitterness, and blame, your peace will start leaking out somewhere. When you talk about your spouse, do your friends help you build bridges or burn them down? Do they say, take a breath and maybe see his side? Or do they say, girl, maybe this relationship isn't serving you anymore? And since when is my marriage supposed to serve me? Right? A marriage isn't just about romance. It's about companionship and love and deep-seated ongoing commitment, right? So, and listen to how your friends interact with other people in their lives. And is that what you want displayed in yours? So sometimes it's not friendship. Sometimes it's division, and division destroys peace. A friend recently told me that she was venting about her husband to her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law agreed with every single complaint. You do too much. He doesn't appreciate you. He's so selfish, just terrible. And at first, my friend was like, oh, she's so supportive. And then all of a sudden she was like, this woman is talking about her own son. So if a mother can tear down her son in one breath and lift up his wife in the next, that's not love, that's poison. Words like that plant seeds. They grow into resentment, self-pity, distance. And suddenly you wake up one day realizing your support system has actually been shaping your bitterness more than your faith. Now, I would like to distinguish that I don't believe in truly cutting people out of your life just because they don't speak your narrative. I do think limiting their input is key. I wanted to make a joke and say, or rage baiting them and offering kind gossip in return to shake things up. Saying like, yeah, no, he's actually a wonderful husband. He's not selfish or terrible. He's obviously just, I'm just venting today or something. Anyways, I don't know. I just thought the adding the rage bait part was funny. So of course, Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Your circle matters. They're the background music of your whole life. So be very careful with that. Last but not least, let's talk about what you let into your life when it comes to the dark arts. So I saw a little girl at a hockey tournament with kid tarot cards, and I thought, Lord have mercy. This is not child's play. So over the years, I've had so many friends tell me it's just for fun. And every time I think, why would I go looking for answers in those places when I can talk to the God who created the entire universe? And I'm going to be honest. I know that one of my friends saw a medium recently, and the medium said that, she was being used by God and all this. And I was just like, listen, that is not something that God is going to affirm at all. So you have to be careful, because a lot of times in those settings where there are mediums and psychics and tea leaf readers, tarot card readers, I don't even know what those are called, and stuff like that, you have, like, they're always telling you it's about love and light. But listen, that's what God's about. Leviticus 19:31 says, do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. And then Deuteronomy says, 18:10-12 says, let no one be found among you who practices divination, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. And Proverbs 4:14 and 15 tells us, do not set foot on the path of the wicked or the way of evildoers. Avoid it, do not travel it, turn away from it, and go on your way. And that's why I would never watch movies with anything demonic. I even close my eyes when those Halloween commercials come on. I do not like Halloween beyond a few cute pumpkins. I don't read books with witches or spells or anything like that, because why would I open a door I never want anything walking through? And here's what really gets me. I think that most of us know that those obvious things are dark, but it's the subtle stuff that sneaks in quietly, much like tarot cards for children. Isn't that nice? And then the shows, the songs, the influencers, the self-help that's really self-worship. A lot of this stuff is slipping into our lives, and that's where our guard slips. So Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So I'm really mindful every day to spend time with God in the morning. The first thing I do before I even drink coffee. I know that's insane. Usually by the time I'm finishing, I'm drinking my coffee. Let's be real. But spending that time in the morning, reconnecting when I'm midday and I'm like, why am I getting so uptight, so anxious? I go right back to prayer all the time. And honestly, for those of you who are not doing that, I don't even know how you get by. And I don't think it's weakness. I think it's beauty. I want to rely on a God who loves me. I want to go to him and ask for direction and guidance. I don't want to pretend that I have all this figured out. And then I want to make better choices all the time, shutting this stuff off, turning worship music on in the living room. I want to fill this home with joy and love. And I have noticed in the last little while, I've been making some of these changes. I've been writing Bible verses on the mirror for my boys and for myself. And seeing these things changes me. And so I am speaking from experience in that way, that I've pushed some of this other stuff out and made room and made different choices. And God is showing me way more beauty. And so when people are so often overcome with, like I said, a year ago right now, I was incredibly depressed. I was pouring as much of the good stuff in as I could, and everything was so heavy. But imagine I hadn't been pouring all that good stuff in. Darkness just seems to produce more darkness. And so my hope and prayer for you is that you can start to look at any elements in your life. If you picked one element and tested the theory of switching it out for something better, I would be so excited to hear from you about how that experience was for you. So lastly here, I'd love for you to take this. I want you to ask yourself, what did I let in today? What did it produce in me? Do I feel peaceful or restless? Grateful or discontented? Some of this stuff is really hard to leave behind, and you might think that I'm taking all of this far too seriously. But remember that I'm your friend who is seriously unserious, guys. I am a big joker, but I take this stuff very seriously because your input always shapes your output. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And that's not fear-based, that's freedom-based. When you protect what goes in, you transform what comes out. Peace instead of panic, faith instead of fear. So thanks for being here, friends. I think this episode stirred something up in you. I hope. If you realize maybe it's time to turn down some voices and turn up some other things, you're not behind, you're becoming. And let's keep growing wiser, stronger, and softer together. God bless you. Have a great day.